I'm going to jump straight in because it has been 6 months. I want to bring out this information and talk about it, but it is so much. It has accrued over 15 years of my life, and it's really hard to organize everything in one place. So I'm just going to start talking about it and hope it will sort itself out, organize itself through questions, and just looking back and seeing what am I missing. I will do separate videos where I deep dive into each particular thing that I'm claiming or mentioning. So this one I will keep a little more high level. From the title, you already know this is about digestive issues, autoimmune disease, chronic diseases. If you think you don't have an autoimmune issue and this doesn't pertain to you, I would think again and just learn a little bit, because if you live in the United States and you eat food and you drink water, it pertains to you. It might not express itself yet or now, but it will likely express itself later on in life. It's possible you feel things, but you don't have a contrast to understand what healthy feels like. So there's a lot to it that I will dive into. So I would say stick around for a little bit or not. But those people who have been here with me on this channel, the few of you, I know it may seem strange. I go from cooking to building stuff and trying to create the sustainability. And then now I'm talking about digestive issues and food and inflammatory diseases. It is all related, because for the last 15 years of my life, that's what I've been trying to solve. I've been trying to understand what is going on with me, and there's not a thing I didn't try that's out there. I have learned so much and experimented so much on myself until finally I got to a point where I actually think I have the answer. There's so many people, hardworking, diligent people who have the willpower, have the discipline, and they just struggle because there's a big veil. There's a big veil that doesn't allow people to seem to go to the root cause, or maybe they think it's too much, impossible, whatever it may be. It just feels weird to me that we're not talking about what is the actual root cause of this issue. So I want to share some things, right? For example, I asked ChatGPT, this is on Google, of course, as well, but I asked ChatGPT, what is an autoimmune disease, right? And it says, an autoimmune disease is a condition in which the body's immune system mistakenly attacks its own healthy cells, tissues, or organs as if they were foreign invaders, such as viruses or bacteria. What I don't like about this at all is, one, I personally think this is complete bullshit. This is just so dishonest. Why is it dishonest? Because automatically it is removing the possibility that there are foreign invaders coming into our system. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? The chronic diseases. By the way, I apologize for the sounds that are coming through from construction outside. I kept trying to wait for a quiet moment, but it just seems like it's never going to happen. So I need to start. Anyway, this is a huge industry, because autoimmune disease is not just autoimmune, like it includes so many things, right? Like arthritis, lupus, type 1 diabetes, sclerosis. It impacts the nervous system, inflammatory bowel disease, and lots and lots of digestive issues. And there's millions of people who annually die from digestive issues. I looked up on CDC database, and I will again share. I will dive a lot deeper into these subjects in future videos, but right now I'm trying to keep it high level. Thyroids and not only inflammatory diseases in general, that includes cancer, and just about everything today that's chronic comes from inflammation, and inflammation comes from our food. It doesn't come from our body just attacking itself. That's just not I find that to be very dishonest. And then, what is the main cause of autoimmune disease? No one is sure what causes autoimmune disease. It's in most cases a combination of factors is probably at work, such as genes, which may make you more likely to develop the disease. Yet again, I find this to be dishonest. Genetic diseases are quite small percent. Like, let's say if you think about actual celiac disease or obesity or a lot of these genetic diseases, they're in such a small percentage of the population, but what seems to have happened is like we just taken this tiny little segment that impacts less than 1% of population and just made it into just everything, because a lot of people who have autoimmune conditions will probably do genetic testing and see that there's nothing in their genetics that causes this. Another thing is, logically, why is it said that these diseases form later in life? If it's genetic, why not right at the beginning? It's a small percentage of kids who have these autoimmune diseases from an early age. Why does it form later? Because it's plain logic, really. As you put more poisons into your body, your organs are first you're resilient and you're young, but your organs eventually going to start failing because they're like, what the heck, how much poison can you put in my body, right? So it makes sense that people develop this way later in the age. And those people who develop it early on in the age, like let's say when they're young, I started in my early 20s, it literally means that I have actually a very strong immune system and I'm getting the response to protect myself. And what's dishonest is then we're taking this strength, this incredibly complex and perfect system that makes up the human organism. We take the positive and we flip it around and say, no, you're disordered, you have an issue, it's a mistake, because we have removed the possibility that what we're putting into our bodies, like the food, there's something could be wrong with it. I mean, what is actually going on there? Because why the possibility that there are foreign invaders isn't in play? And again, I'm asking the question, but I personally think I know the answer. So autoimmune diseases, again, this is just listing the various types of things, like it's APS, CTD, GI, arthritis, thyroid, so vascular stuff. So again, it's chronic diseases alone are 4.1 trillion in annual health cost. Autoimmune alone, like celiac disease and lupus and such, are 100 billion annual. These are annual numbers. This is a huge industry. If you get bored with the whole journey, because I'm going to go through how it started and what steps I've made, and so that I can lay out what brought me to my conclusion, you can skip to the end. I think I'm already getting into it. I asked USDA to send me a list of chemicals that are in the food, especially meat, because when you buy your organic whole foods beef and the packaging says beef, ingredients, beef, well, I was curious if that is accurate, because I was starting to get sick from beef, which I'm a huge advocate of animal protein. I think it's essential for our lives, for our muscle development, for our strength as humans. So nothing against veganism, it's just I think animal protein is essential. And I was starting to get sick and didn't know what to do about it. So as I asked USDA to send me this document, and look at this, 76 pages of lined items, as they basically lay out what type of, every single step of the process, what does it include. And not only that, it's just, if you look, it says Labeling requirements, none under the accepted conditions of use. None. So basically, they're not required to label that it's beef and citric acid and lactic acid and all these chemicals that are made in the lab. I guess I'll jump right straight into it, right? The cause is this list, right? These list of chemicals are consistently in our food, including our meat and whole foods that we think are healthy. So in Europe, they're called E numbers, and the way they have it going on, the way they use it, they actually are required to list an E number. So if you have garlic water and citric acid, which is a lab-made chemical and derived from, it's made from black mold, okay? The same black mold that grows on food, that when your food spoils and it creates this black mold to tell you like, hey, this is bad and this poisonous and it's bad for your health, don't touch it. So that very same black mold is what we use to feed it back to people, and it's amazing who's behind it too. So yeah, so if you have, let's say, citric acid with your garlic in your garlic jar, it will say E330. If you're drinking wine and it's not spontaneously fermented, organically fermented, it has artificial commercial yeast to aid the process, it will say E220, for example, for wine. I'm definitely jumping a bit ahead, so let me backtrack and actually keep it high level and go through my experience and how did I come to this place and what is exactly in our food and water and just basically things we're intaking. Of course, there's a lot more environmentally and cosmetics and blah, blah, blah. But what's most important is what we actually consume and put into our body. How did this start? So 15 years ago, right around 2008, is when I start reacting to foods differently. And I really don't know what was the spark. I have some ideas that I don't want to get into. All of a sudden, I started reacting to food really badly. And I would eat food, and the very food that's supposed to give you energy, source of life, gets you going, it would just depress me, bloat me to undescribable degrees. My entire digestive system was shut down. I would be constantly tired. My joints would be in pain. My moods were all over the place. Depression, sadness. It's just, I have a very strong willpower, and I still had just I had to push so much to just get with my day and do things. So I started to keep a journal. I started journaling like what am I eating, because you might wonder why I didn't go to a doctor. I will say I lost my faith in modern medicine a while back. It's not that I don't go to a doctor ever, but definitely, especially something like so vague, I just really didn't see logically how a doctor can help me when it's very internal and it's so vague, right? I seem to react to food. Seeing friends forever at the doctor's door with steroid shots and just never getting answers, just drugs after drugs being presented to them, just definitely did not feel like figured I will be the best advocate for my health, and I have the best interest to heal myself. So I took the matter in my hands. And actually, I will tell a quick story why at a young age I lost faith in medicine. So my mother, she had a tiny little dot on her stomach, and we took her to the doctor, or she went to the doctor, and they gave her some gel to apply. Then the thing starts getting bigger and bigger. It first is pea size, then dime size, then quarter size, and this is gradually becoming fairly large, and now it's 2 years. 2 years, my mother goes to the doctor and they just keep giving her this and that, and they're doubling down on the medicine, like you apply this first and this one. Countless amount of insurance money in the background, countless amount of doctor's visits, and we're just getting annoyed because, where we come from it was a third world country, and medicine is practiced differently. There's no insurance companies, there's no insurance for doctors to keep their jobs. You have to be a good doctor to keep your job. That is changing, by the way, now, but back in the day that was the case. So we just took a picture and sent it to a friend of ours' son, who's a urologist, not even a skin doctor or anything of that sort. And he just looked at it and he said, just tell the doctor to prescribe this gel and it will be gone in like a few days. And we go to the doctor and we say, hey, can you prescribe this? And the doctor's response just blew our minds. The doctor looked at their notes and whatnot, and they said, I cannot prescribe this gel until 80% of your body is covered. 80%. If that doesn't just immediately give you an understanding how the medicine here works. So you have the cure. By the way, that was the cure. We, of course, the doctor didn't prescribe. We contacted back. We asked them to ship one for us, and it was gone in 3 days. So they have the actual cure, but they won't prescribe it until you have lost years of your life, your health, your quality of life, right? You're constantly at the hospital door with this ugly thing that keeps just becoming bigger and bigger, and of course impacting your life. 80%, the amount of money that they would just be making those years as you just keep going back and keep just doing this, it is disgusting. So to me, it was quite clear. Again, I don't know if I was 19, 20, 21, something like that. I was quite young. But it was just so clear to me that I don't think the doctor was malicious. I don't think the doctor even understood what they were doing. I think the doctor has gone through school and now they're doing what they learned. And what they learned is, and what they were taught is to be salesmen for pharmaceutical companies. There, I said it. I wasn't going to go take that turn yet. I do think surgery in America is the best in the world, probably, because when I talk about the medicine and doctors, I'm not talking about surgery. Surgery is a very different thing. I'm talking about all these chronic diseases and all these general doctors who just go by the book and just keep prescribing pills, and that's the solution. Nobody wants to understand the root cause and actually cure it. And again, I don't think these people are malicious. It's just what they've learned. And those doctors who understand what's going on, they click and they want to make a difference. Props to them. There's a lot of those in the system. But in general, to find that unicorn doctor is rare. That's why people end up taking the matters more and more. You can see people taking the matter in their own hands when it comes to their health. That is the reason why I didn't go to the doctor. And I started journaling. What do I eat? What am I eating every day? And just trying to recognize patterns in my consumption. What I found quite quickly, I saw that, wheat, pasta, bread, like just wheat-based products seemed to be a pretty big deal. And but I was young, and that was predominantly a lot of my diet. So it took me about 1.5 years to really just be like, okay, I need to cut this completely out. So I cut everything out, like anything wheat-based, and I definitely felt immediately much better. Not 100%, but definitely much better. And and then just about half a year later, in 2010, this entire gluten-free craze, this jargon started happening, which, at the time I completely bought into. I thought like, wow, that could have helped me, all this journaling and figuring this out on my own if this was, out there beforehand. But it was kind of good that the restaurants were starting to recognize this and so on and so forth. Of course, as that progressed later in the years, I was very puzzled I was becoming highly skeptical of that jargon. I really don't like big buzzwords. I would go to a restaurant, and to avoid the buzzwords, I would say, I have wheat allergies, and I would realize that the chef doesn't seem to understand what I'm saying. Like, what I had to just go and list like flour, bread, pasta, and just wheat products, and it wouldn't click until I would say gluten-free. So it was a huge thing that while I was going with this and thinking that I'm gluten intolerant, later on that I was celiac because I just couldn't. I was constantly still getting sick. But that jargon was really in the back of my mind bothering me a lot. Basically, as time progressed, for a moment I felt good. Then I started again like feeling not great. I started cutting a lot of things out, like corn, other grains, other heavy things. So just tried every diet in the book, probably from paleo, ketogenic. This is when I got into fasting. So I would reset my system. I would do 7-day fast and reset the system, then start introducing food back again to kind of observe and understand what's going on. Everything was constantly pointing me to celiac disease. My symptoms, there's a couple of ways celiac can express itself, and one of the ways which was matching perfectly. And I was also consulting with a couple of doctors that are friends, some doctors, some nurses, just friends, family, that I would consult with to see what they say. I never tested for celiac because to actually accurately test for it, you have to go back into eating wheat, and it just didn't make sense to me, because let's say if I accidentally ate without knowing, like one time it happened in Italy, I had wheat pizza, which I thought was gluten-free. I was at a celiac restaurant that has 2 kitchens, but they brought me the wrong order. And as I ate, I just started having all the, initial responses. Then they realized that they had made a mistake. It took 6 months for that 2 slices of pizza to finally just get out of my system so I can start over. So because it was such a big deal every time the mistake would have happened, I definitely did not want to go through that. Not to mention, again, in the back of my mind, I was constantly hoping there's something else, because celiac disease, in reality, it's such a small percentage of population that has it, and usually it is genetic. I did DNA testing. There was nothing genetic in there. Like, there was nothing in my genes. In fact, I had very strong genes. Like, I'm supposed to be very healthy. Where was I? So at this point, years are going by, of course. I'm trying everything, elimination diets, low FODMAP. The scientific realm went very strong into the stem cell resets, including fasting became a little more mainstream. What else? The gut microbiome and how to try to find the right balance and so on and so forth. There's so much great discoveries that we've done over the years, in scientific discoveries, but it's just sad that a lot of it is being done because we're trying to cure something at the wrong level, right? Like, for example, if you have a house where the foundation is cracked and it's collapsing, and then you have the floor that's just kind of moving a little bit and it's uneven and it's causing issues. Then you have the walls standing there that are, the paint is chipping and walls are cracking, right? So there are some people who just keep painting the walls and wondering why it's chipping. But then a lot of the scientific stuff that's happening right now, I feel like they're still not at the foundational level. They're still just trying to fix the floor. It's like okay, well, this diseases exist, so let's just try to figure out how to manage it, instead of, hey, let's eliminate the very cause of it so that we don't have these diseases. This is a man-made artificial crap that's in our lives that doesn't have to be there. Now, basically, years are going by, and my quality of life was pretty weird, right? Because people share food in their communities with friends, with family, and it was just getting really difficult, because unless I'm eating at home with in charge of my particular ingredients, I would get sick every time I would go out, and sometimes I would get sick at home, and I just couldn't understand what is going on. Why can I not make ends with, like, why can't I identify? But that's because I was wrongfully thinking that it's particular foods that are causing this, rather than a treatment or what the food goes through to get to your plate. The processing, right? Here's where yet another dishonesty exists in this market. It's not dishonesty necessarily, it's just alteration of perspective. I think the perception of people has been altered to think a certain way versus another way. So just, we constantly just miss the real mark, right? For example, when we say processed foods, we imagine this. This is what we think when we say processed foods. And yes, this is processed to a degree where there's probably not a single nutrition or organic thing left in here. This is probably just all made of just chemicals. So yes, this is very processed. But we do not at all think that this is processed. We know it goes through a certain process. When we think of healthy foods, we don't think of these foods as there could be anything wrong here. So this is where we are wrong, right? This is where a lot of these autoimmune, these unknown things are coming from, because it's not really unknown, it's just giant dishonesty behind this industry. Let me, I guess, get to that sector of my life. So life became very difficult. I stopped going out. The relationships were just impossible to handle. It was just better for me to be a hermit at home, deal with my issues, and to a point where some of my family members would just be like, or even outside friends would be like, you sure you're not like mentally making yourself sick or something? So I started to think like, God, maybe it's psychological, right? Like I tried and tested so many hypotheses to try to understand, could this be, what is this? I was open. I wanted the truth, so I was open to just about anything, which may have seemed not so, because I would just get frustrated when people would start telling me things and making me feel horrible, because I'm already going through such crazy life, and my quality of life is so low that on top of that, it's just, I just really didn't want to hear a lot of comments about could this be mental, could this be whatever. But I was open and still hearing that, okay, let me try every hypothesis possible. And that is why I would constantly reset my system, start over. Fasting became such a huge part of my life that I was just predominantly fasting all the time. So I was eating very little food because that's when I felt good. And so finally, I got to a point, because of that obsessive level of no cross-contamination, because I was still stuck a little bit on the celiac disease, no cross-contamination, no this, no that. I became obsessive level of like, what ingredients do I eat? So I was okay for a moment. There was a moment I was okay, but again, just alone to myself. I moved to Texas, and all of my problems, this is 2000, basically the last couple of years, the last 3 years is when majority of the things just came to head for me. This is when it's just like the big aha descended. I went back to journaling, and I noticed that I am getting sick every time I eat meat. So this collapsed my world. This was, I can't even describe the anger I was feeling, the hurt I was feeling, because I, again, love meat. That was for a long time predominantly my diet, and I was like, what is going on all of a sudden? What's happening with meat all of a sudden? Did something change? I started fasting and resetting and fasting and resetting, and finally one time I was on my second day of breaking the fast, and I was still trickling food into my system. I had kale, spinach, salt, and garlic. So sauteed kale and spinach. I was at my parents' house visiting. When I made the sauteed kale and spinach, my mom didn't have a fresh garlic in her fridge at that moment. So I took a garlic jar, that's minced garlic, and I read the label, and it said garlic, water, citric acid. So I thought, oh, okay, so garlic, water, lemon juice, right? Fine. I used it. The second I had the food, it's just things start boiling. My stomach was going crazy immediately. I just looked like a pregnant woman with how I bloated immediately. Just, I know it's not a sexy topic to talk about, but just like burping and just awful feeling, because now I'm also coming out of a 7-day fast. So it was just insane and intense. So I go backtrack. I'm like, okay, there was literally 4 ingredients. What's going on? So now as I isolated citric acid, I started learning what the heck is citric acid. Oh boy, was that not lemon juice, right? Here's yet another huge misleading dishonesty here. As I mentioned earlier in the video, at least in Europe, there's this E-list, so that you know it's called the E-number. So when you're talking about your citric acid, you know what it is. You know that it's the chemical and not the lemon juice. US goes above and beyond to call these things organic. When I would talk to processing units, and when I'm talking about processing units, I'm not talking about places like large processing plants, rather your local, the ones your local farmers use to process the meat. They oftentimes they think these are organic compounds that they're using, so they don't even know what they're putting in that diligently grass-fed, grass-raised beef. Then they just, the second they go into processing, it just takes a twist and all sorts of poisons get added to it. But here's the dishonesty, right? Like in Europe, again, E-numbers, citric acid, like someone just can easily, most people don't read past certain paragraphs. Like you can just go, citric acid is an organic compound with a chemical formula, blah, blah, blah. Citric acid occurs in a variety of fruits and vegetables. So this is what most people are going to see and be like, yeah, see, like it's fine. But then, of course, if you learn more and more, you realize that, okay, you realize how in 1917, a chemist discovered that certain strains of mold, Aspergillus niger, could be effective citric acid producers. And pharmaceutical company Pfizer can't get away with this goddamn name. Pharmaceutical company Pfizer began industrial level production using this technique 2 years later. Just 2 years later. Tell me, obviously, you did not just discover something and 2 years commercialize the heck out of it. Clearly, no studies could have been done in 2 years to understand the long implication of consuming this crap, right? No studies, straight to market. We're the guinea pigs. We are nothing but lab rats. Oof, I'm getting ahead of myself again. So anyway, so citric acid, so what is citric acid? Citric acid is traditionally produced from Aspergillus niger. Production is pretty much 1.6 tons per year, and I think over here it says how this is matching with why I started feeling sicker, recently. Global production in 2018 was in excess by 2 million tons. 2 million tons. Okay? Do you think they just disposed it? No, they sold it. They lobbied and increased the level of citric acid used in food. Look at this. This is lactic acid. All of these acids that are in our food, they come in different stages. Where was that? They come in various stages of processing, and they're there. Huge one in beef processing is lactic acid, but also citric acid, but they're all the same crap, okay? So they're all the same shit. They're lab-made chemicals. Let me actually go back and what was it? Aspergillus niger. So it's a fungus, and it's a type of a mold, and which can be sometimes be attributed to the cause of some causes of pneumonia. It's black mold, and it's the causative agent of black mold on the outside of certain foods such as apricots, onions, grapes, therefore making Aspergillus niger a food spoilage organism. Citric acid is a commodity chemical produced and consumed throughout the world. Okay, capacity utilization in two largest producing regions was 88% of the United States and 85% of West Europe, which is also where the majority of the problems are. United States is the most unhealthy in the world, and I think why Europe is slightly better off is because, again, they are required to label it properly. So those people who just want to stay clear, they can actually stay clear, whereas in United States, even with the knowledge that what's in it, it's just impossible to stay clear of this. So let me backtrack a little bit because I keep jumping ahead. After I discovered the citric acid, it just took me into a rabbit hole of studying and just researching, learning. This is when I contacted USDA and got this list of chemicals that they use and do not require it to be labeled. Through my research, as I discovered this, then I started trying to figure out, can I get beef that doesn't have this? No, I cannot. So even if you talk to a local farmer, most of them, they don't do the processing on their farm. They send it to a processor, and a processor 100% uses this because it is required. It is required by USDA. It goes as far as if you even sell it to your neighbor, USDA has to just stick their nose in it and require this stuff. And what does this process entail? So what they do is they hang the carcass of the slaughtered animal to dry for 21 to 28 days. Basically, that completely dehydrates the beef. Then they put this solution in the water. Usually it used to be about 2% solution per gallon of water. So now they have raised it to 10%. So it's complete hit or miss who's doing 10%, who's still doing 2%. So this is why also it's really hard to, sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not fine. And of course, if you're getting unaged beef, then even though that they have sprayed it, the carcass with this acids, it later on they just trim that fat off, so they end up trimming all of that chemicals off, and it ends up being healthier because you didn't dehydrate the beef, then rehydrate it with this poisoned water. Right? When you hang the beef to dry for 28 days, 21 days, even 14 days, then you spray until you bring the beef back. Then now you have every part of that beef just soaked in this poison. When again, if it's unaged, you're not dehydrating it, so it retains its original moisture. So the poison is only on the outside carcass, which when it gets to the butcher, they actually trim all that stuff out. So this is why I think Michaela Peterson is able to eat unaged beef and she's fine. I actually don't think she has histamine intolerance. She has mentioned, I believe, how she gets the arthritis and all that, her symptoms coming back from wine as well. Wine also, she thinks because wine is fermented and the beef is aged, so that must be the histamine. But I actually think it's not the histamine. I think it's the commercial yeast, the E220 that's being used in wine, and it's the lactic and citric and whatever else acids that are used in beef processing that are causing her issue most likely. Most likely if she had spontaneously fermented organic wine, again, not organic wine as in organic grape, but spontaneously fermented, which is absolutely no commercial yeasts added to aid the process, she most likely would feel fine. I just a hypothesis, I think I would explore if I was her. Okay, so now with all this information in my hands, now that I'm like, all right, so basically our food is heavily processed and the fruits and vegetables are also obviously preserved. They're a little bit better off when you're talking about roots and turnips and things that make sense, that like they already have long shelf life, like potatoes and such. You don't really need to do extra stuff to them oftentimes, but like when it comes to fruits, probably worth understanding how that's processed and just getting organic. And when I say organic, not just because it's labeled organic, rather just really get to the bottom of things and understand where it's coming from and what process was used. Sometimes actually with fruits and veggies it's a bit easier. There are some bagged, the most unattractive little tiny apples sitting in a bag that says nothing was used seem to be fine. Like I eat them and they're fine. But overall, the food is so optimized for shelf life that the nutrient content in it is low. So I still haven't figured out necessarily where do probiotics come in. Is that helpful or not? But of course, if it's probiotic, it's still, I would make sure that it doesn't have any acids in the process, in the capsule, in the whatever, because this shit is everywhere. It's in everything. Like so hard to stay away in America. So with all this information, this is becoming a very long video. Now I had formed this hypothesis. It appears that these acids in processing in the healthy foods that we don't even think of as processed foods, these acids are causing this disease, this autoimmune response. And our body is saying, hey, that shit is harmful for you, don't do it. And even though we're very diligent, we still can stay clear because this is America and this is how things are done. My hypothesis was, if I was to consume just about any real food, sounds like I should be fine. If I go to a third world country that doesn't have all these fancy labs and chemicals to spoil their food with, I likely should be, if my hypothesis is correct, I should have absolutely no issues. Just to give you a contrast, in the United States, if I have 2 days in a month, entire month, 2 days when I feel good, it's a good month. That's when I'm just like full of life, just taking over the world, just trying to do everything like I had put off, everything I want to do. So I get creative, I get in this great moods. So it's usually just, if I get a 2-day break in a month, that's considered good month. So now I go to a third world country and I go to farms that I trust. I have a family of farmers in Armenia, and I don't know if Armenia is third world or second world, whatever. It's the big city is very westernized and blooming with life, but then it's a very poor economy and everything is still quite, like if you compare to US, it's like really like 20 to 50 years behind. 20 to 50 years behind. And in this particular case, it's a plus when it comes to the food, because again, they haven't figured out a way to spoil the food. Plus, there's like a 2 million population. It's not as difficult to feed 2 million population, whereas US obviously is 380 million people. So it's just, harder perhaps to figure these things out. But again, I think still we need to hold certain officials accountable, like FDA, USDA, because they were formed to protect us, yet seems like they are enriching some friends of theirs, like Pfizer. Now, I go to Armenia and I start testing my hypothesis. I start eating organic, real food. Of course, I'm still keeping to the premise. I'm not taking anything off the shelves in the stores, because the same crap, of course, exists there too when it comes to shelf foods. But I just keep to whole organic foods. And my God, the first week, of course, my body was just processing and filtering and figuring things out. After the first week, maybe a week and a half, my body started working like clockwork. I mean, I cannot even describe how amazing healthy feels, and how I had forgotten how healthy felt. That incredible veil just off, like the mental fog, the clarity, the creativity, the fullness of the quality of your life. And of course, all because your gut is doing its work, your organs are not burdened, and your system is working as it should. If you consume food, it digests within 4 to 5 hours maximum. And if you're not digesting your food at least daily, you have an issue. And if your doctor is telling you that it is normal, find another doctor, because that's not normal. That's not how human anatomy works. What's sad about this, there are so many people in the United States that probably have never actually traveled outside, especially to a third world country. At most, they go to West Europe. They continue consuming similar stuff that they consume here. But majority of people actually do not have an understanding of what healthy feels like. So many people think that what they feel when they eat food is that's how it is. Like, you're supposed to get tired when you eat pasta. You're supposed to get bloated and cranky when you eat food. And that's just not right. And then, of course, combined with other digestive issues, it's just not a life to live. And 2 months in Armenia, I had not a single bad day, not a single accident. I just kept, and then of course, the minute I was like, wow, this is incredible, I ventured out a little bit. I started going to restaurants. Even in restaurants, I still kept to the local cuisine. I kept to Armenian food, because I know that's like beef and vegetables, like the salads, whatever. So I just was eating Armenian cuisine. And my God, it just felt so amazing to be able to just go out with friends and have a meal and share and laugh. And I found a winery that had spontaneously fermented wine, and it was just amazing to just feel healthy. And again, not a single bad day where things malfunction. And this is where, here's the crazy part, this is where I decided to even try wheat, okay? That was a big, huge, scary point for me, because of how much of my life I thought I had celiac disease. But let me give credit where it's due. There was this woman, Anna, in California, who's a bread maker, and I met her through Instagram, and later I met her in person. And she would say, like, she thinks that if people were to mill their own grain and bake their own bread, they wouldn't have the the gluten intolerance. And that, at the time when she told me that, I felt like she just really doesn't understand the severity of the issue. But at the same time, a seed was planted, because I just kept thinking about it, and I kept relating to that gluten-free jargon and buzzwords, and how people don't seem to understand. When I would say wheat allergies, they wouldn't understand and connect the dots. So all that just ended up just maturing towards the end, where I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go to my uncle and grab some wheat that he has grown. I know precisely what's gone into it, and what kind of grain it is. And I milled it to flour, and I didn't bake bread. I don't know how to bake breads, but I made something basically with breading, and I ate it, and it was fine. Later on, I found out that a lot of the kebabs I was eating at restaurants also use actually breadcrumbs to soften a little bit the meat, to create some juiciness, which kind of doesn't seem intuitive to me, but it's something to bind basically, and to create softness. And I was eating those kebabs, and that was fine too, because again, in Armenia, the kind of wheat grain that we use, and also how we process, is just mainly in the country, right? It doesn't come from outside. It doesn't have chemicals added. It's just the wheat that gets milled into flour and hits the market. So this was, for me, this is the big giant information that I've been sitting on, that I've been really wanting to communicate, because I don't see anyone else talking about this. And there's some amazing discoveries happening with the whole microbiome thing, with the stem cells shots and resetting and all that. And this is all great. This is all useful. But if you go and get a $30,000 stem cell treatment and you completely reset, but then you turn around and put the same poison in the body, the same thing's going to happen. It's not going to treat it, because we're not treating it at the level that we need to treat this. So what can we do, right? Like, now it's a question. It's like, okay, not everyone can just drop everything and go grow their own food, and not everyone can, like, has access to things like ordering their beef from New Zealand or whatever. But I think there are things we probably can do. I will make a video where I will go through how am I trying to avoid this in US, which is hard. Again, there's some slip-ups that happen because I'm continuously testing various items. But currently, I do order, I have started to avoid beef a little bit in US, which I don't like that. I really would like to go back to eating beef, especially with all this war on beef. Just wait. A couple of years from now, probably even sooner, because of how the concentration levels have increased to process the beef. I bet you now the beef being number one cause of inflammation is going to become like a buzzy thing, just like gluten did. Just watch this coming, because there is a huge war on beef. I do want to show you something actually here. Okay, yeah. So check this out. While lactic acid offers a very effective solution for beef processors in treating beef carcasses to kill pathogens, it does have some disadvantages. Previously used at concentrations between 2 and 5% to treat beef, lactic acid is approved for use at concentrations up to 10%. Okay, that's insane amount more, right? Like, obviously this is why we're having worse and worse problems, because if you go back in time, there was like 0.5% being used, then 0.1% was then 1% was being used, then 1.5% was being used through history, then it became 2, and for the longest time it was 2, then it became 2 to 5, now it's 10% for some processes, right? A higher concentration of lactic acid may do more to ensure food safety. However, as the concentration increases, so does the risk for altering the surface texture, color, and flavor of the beef. as too much lactic acid can break down the tissue and cause the beef to brown. It ensures food safety, but it's damaging the texture. If this chemical is damaging the texture of the beef, what are we made of? It's still meat. Like, does it not damage our intestines and our gut and our gallbladder and everything else? So here's my favorite part. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Heavier concentrations of lactic acid can also have negative effects on beef processing plants and their equipment. Although it is a naturally occurring compound, it is not. It is not a naturally occurring compound. It can still erode rails, concrete, walls, and other substructures. The use of higher concentration may also increase wastewater treatment costs and accelerate the deterioration of pipes and wastewater system. I mean, this is safe for consumption, it's healthy for you, but it erodes concrete. Let that digest. Let that digest. Anyway, I will go a lot deeper into each one of these claims that I made, each one of these research points that I showed here, but I also will make a video how am I trying to manage it here in US, because I just moved to Tennessee, and boy, Tennessee water is horrible. And for a while I was having issues with the water, but because I never had issues in New York with the water, I actually was not even thinking, for some reason I wasn't thinking about the water. Then I got reverse osmosis water, thinking that's the best, right? No, that also is not the best, because oftentimes these reverse osmosis systems, they have this final stage where it says it improves water taste or adds back minerals. These minerals are not organic. Magnesium chloride is an inorganic compound. It's a chemical. So oftentimes, basically, if you're consuming distilled water from a store or reverse osmosis water, they add back these inorganic chemicals, and this is not a way to go if you have such a sensitive autoimmune issue. So the way I solved that problem, I'll tell you right now, is first I run my water through, and I'm not even sure how much it's fixing, but my health has gotten significantly better for now. So I first filter it through charcoal, then fluoride filters. Then I take that water, then I run it through this pitcher called Zero Water, which seems to be a really good filter. So then it just filters even further. Yes, it does remove just about everything out of the water. But it's fine, because if you're eating healthy foods, you already get the minerals. So you add a banana, that's your magnesium, right? Like, you don't need to have fake magnesium in your water. So anyway, that's aside from everything. But what can we do is I will start talking about more how you can potentially avoid some of this here, as difficult as it is. I can give you brands that have proven to be trusted, at least for now. They haven't spoiled their product just yet. Wine brands for those wine-loving people who would love to have a glass of red, and so on. I will do videos on that. And then lastly, if people understand this and the knowledge is there, we can make a difference in numbers. Yes, FDA is too big. Yes, Pfizer is too big. Yes, USDA is too big. But there is strength in numbers. So we have to start educating people in what's going on. Even if you don't have these issues yet, it will express itself later in life. This is still a poison you're injecting, and your body is taking this in. So more disinformation gets out, more farmers will know what happens to their diligently raised beef, right? They diligently go out of their way to grass feed their beef, they're proud to be organic and so on. Then it just gets to processing and takes this turn that nobody seems to understand how bad it is. And then more people working in processing centers will start understanding, and they will maybe decrease the amount of the solution that they're using so that it's a little bit less harmful until maybe something bigger is done, like holding people accountable, holding these organizations accountable, or at least pushing to have honest labeling. Just go with the E numbers, show me what I'm eating, so that at least I can go out of my way to just leave it out or figure out how am I going to feed myself. And then of course, those who have opportunity to raise their own or grow their own food, that's probably the best way to go. I do intend to create full sustainable farm or a garden and start having more like these health retreats where people maybe can come and test this out for themselves. And I'm now consuming deer, bison, lamb. I order deer meat, for example, from New Zealand, and I eat that, and it has been fine. There are ways. Costco, as crazy as it is, such a giant, you would not imagine, but Costco actually has some items that could be helpful to get by until something is done about it. So what is my message here predominantly? We have been obviously lied to, and I think most people at this point understand and know that the medical system has failed us. And all these wonderful scientific breakthroughs that we've gone through, now it's just doing mental backflips. We no longer are using science for the greater good, rather it's just being used to enrich certain pockets more and more. And what's happening is basically the medical system has failed us. The experts, anytime someone says the experts, I just have literally a physical reaction to it. We don't have experts, and experts don't have our best interest. Experts have the best interest of their buddies, and whoever those buddies are, and whoever they lobby for, and whatever it is that they're protecting. So I have zero faith in experts. As sad and heartbreaking as it is, science now is just all of our scientific attention is not towards how to help people and not towards how to be healthier, how to improve something. Rather, it's just curiosity-based stuff like genetic editing and mRNA, which again, mRNA could be used in a far better way than it's being used now. We have been turned into a product that some powers are clearly messing with. Some just purely for money, and some seem to be actually quite curious what they can make of us. Genetic editing is one of those. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, follow World Economic Forum and their ideas of how humans are should be changing and altering, and how there's a much better intelligent design that could be had instead of these peasant plebs that we are. So anyway, I think I need to wrap up this video. It's been definitely far longer than I intended. I did dive a little bit more into things than I intended, but it was really hard to not put this out. Bottom line, take the ownership of your health in your own hands. If all you're offered is drugs, think again. I'm not a medical professional. I am not an expert in this field, but it has taken me 15 years to bring my health to a certain place and to finally understand what is the underlying cause, where I see friends, dear friends, who are just constantly just getting steroid shots and this and that, and their health continually declines while mine has been continually improving. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, put it down. Be nice. And yeah, welcome to America, land of the free, home of the brave. But this is definitely time to be brave, because you ain't free.